You're my dad's age mate, you sick bastard! I'm not your toy!
He had her bent over his desk, her body trembling as she finally broke, sobbing. This is wrong. You're my father's age. I'm not your toy. But instead of stopping, the ruthless Mafia boss grabbed her chin, forced her to look, and showed her a photo that shattered everything. Her own mother in his arms 21 years ago. You think this is about lust? He hissed. This is about revenge. Welcome to K-fairytales stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Benita Okafor never wanted to return to Seoul. She'd left when she was 7, after her mother died, and her father moved them back to Lagos to start over. But now, at 23, she was back as a photojournalist on assignment, documenting the city's underground culture for an international magazine. Her editor wanted the real Seoul, the dangerous parts tourists never saw, the places where power and corruption lived in shadows. Benita had 3 weeks to deliver a story that would make her career. She had no idea it would nearly end her life. The assignment led her to the Devil's Den, an exclusive nightclub in Gangnam owned by one of Seoul's most dangerous men. Kang Minho, 50 years old, ruthless, untouchable. He controlled half the city's underground operations, from illegal gambling to weapons trafficking, all hidden behind legitimate businesses. The police couldn't touch him because he owned them too. Benita had spent 2 weeks researching him, looking at grainy photos, reading reports from journalists who'd tried and failed to expose him. Most had disappeared or suddenly dropped their investigations. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was determined. Getting into the Devil's Den wasn't easy. It was members only, invitation required, security tighter than a fortress. But Benita had a contact, a former employee willing to talk if she promised anonymity. They'd agreed to meet inside the club at midnight. Her contact would get her in through the staff entrance. Benita arrived at 11:45, her camera hidden in her purse, dressed in a black dress that helped her blend in with the elite crowd. The back alley was dark, smelling of rain and garbage. She knocked 3 times on the metal door like her contact had instructed. The door opened and a young woman pulled her inside quickly, eyes darting around nervously. You have 10 minutes, the woman whispered in Korean. Benita understood perfectly. Her mother had made sure she was fluent before she died. That's all I need. Just show me where the private rooms are. The woman led her through a maze of hallways, past kitchens where staff worked frantically, past storage rooms filled with expensive liquor. They stopped at a corner where the hallway split in 2 directions. Down there, the woman pointed left. That's where he conducts business. But if you get caught, I don't know you. Before Benita could respond, the woman disappeared back the way they came. Benita took a breath and walked down the hallway. The music from the main club was muffled here, replaced by thick silence and dim lighting. Doors lined both sides, all closed, all identical. She pulled out her camera, adjusted the settings for low light, and started taking photos of anything that might be useful. The expensive artwork on the walls, the security cameras she'd have to avoid, the names on some of the doors written in gold plates. Then she heard voices, male voices, speaking in Korean, getting closer. Benita's heart jumped. She looked around frantically for somewhere to hide. There was a door slightly ajar 3 feet away. She slipped inside and pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The room was an office. Massive, luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seoul skyline. A desk made of dark wood sat in the center, papers scattered across it. Benita knew she should leave, but journalist instinct took over. She moved quickly to the desk, her camera ready. If she could photograph those documents, maybe she'd find something incriminating. She started shooting, frame after frame, when the voices stopped right outside the door. Sir, the shipment from Busan arrived early. They're waiting in room 7. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. And make sure nobody disturbs me. I need to make a call first. Benita's blood turned to ice, that voice. Deep, commanding, laced with authority. It had to be him, Kang Minho. The door swung open and light flooded the room. Benita spun around, camera still in her hand, and came face to face with the most dangerous man in Seoul. He stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. His hair was dark with silver at the temples, his face all sharp angles and cold beauty. But it was his eyes that froze her in place. Dark, intelligent, and currently locked on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. For 3 long seconds, neither of them moved. Then Minho stepped inside and closed the door behind him with a soft click. The sound was like a death sentence. "Well," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "This is unexpected." Benita's mind raced. She could run, but he was blocking the only exit. She could scream, but who would help her in his own club? She could lie, but the camera in her hand made that pointless. So she did the only thing she could think of. She lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. "Kang Minho, I presume." His eyebrow raised slightly. "You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are. And yet you broke into my office. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." He walked toward her slowly, each step measured. "Which is it?" Benita's pulse was hammering, but she forced herself to stay still. "I'm a journalist. I'm writing a story about Seoul's underground culture. Your club is part of that story." "A journalist." He repeated the word like it amused him. "And you thought breaking into my private office was good journalism?" "I thought getting the truth was good journalism." Minho stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, masculine, intoxicating. "The truth," he said softly, "is that you just made the biggest mistake of your life." He held out his hand. "Give me the camera." "No." The word came out stronger than she felt. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. People clearly didn't tell him no very often. That wasn't a request. "And I'm not handing over my work." Benita knew she was pushing her luck, but if she gave up the camera, she had nothing. No story, no evidence, no reason for being here. Minho studied her face for a long moment, and Benita felt like he was seeing straight through her, reading her thoughts, measuring her fear, deciding what to do with her. Then he moved, faster than she expected. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, the one holding the camera. His grip was firm, painful. "Let go," he said quietly. "I'll scream. Go ahead. No one will come." He was right, and they both knew it. Minho twisted her wrist just enough to make her fingers loosen. The camera fell to the floor with a crack. Before Benita could react, he crushed it under his heel. Years of work, dozens of photos, her entire assignment destroyed in seconds. Rage flooded through her. "You bastard!" She swung at him with her free hand, but he caught that wrist too, spinning her around and pulling her back against his chest. His arm locked around her waist like an iron band. "Careful," he breathed against her ear. "I don't appreciate being called names." Benita struggled, but he was too strong. "Let me go. Not until we have a conversation about what happens now." His voice was calm, almost gentle, which made it more terrifying. "You broke into my club, invaded my privacy, attempted to steal information. In my world, people die for less, then kill me and get it over with." Minho went very still. Then he turned her around to face him, his hands gripping her shoulders. His eyes searched her face and something shifted in his expression. The coldness cracked, replaced by shock. "What's your name?" the question threw her. "What does it matter? Tell me your name." There was an urgency in his voice now that confused her. Benita Okafor." Minho's grip tightened on her shoulders. "Okafor, Nigerian." "Yes, my father is Nigerian. My mother was Korean." The moment she said it, everything changed. Minho's face went pale. His hands dropped from her shoulders like she'd burned him. He took a step back, then another, staring at her like he was seeing a ghost. "Your mother," he said, his voice strange. "What was her name?" Benita's heart was pounding. "Why? Answer the question." The command was sharp, desperate. "Park Ji-won. She died when I was 7. Why do you care?" Minho turned away from her, his hand running through his hair. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer with shaking hands, and pulled out a photograph. He stared at it for a long moment, his jaw clenched before holding it out to her. "Come here." It wasn't a request. Benita approached cautiously, took the photo, and her breath caught. It was her mother, young, beautiful, smiling at the camera. But she wasn't alone. A younger version of Minho had his arm around her waist. They looked happy. "In love? I don't understand," Benita whispered. Minho's laugh was bitter. "Of course you don't. How could you?" He took the photo back, staring at it. 21 years ago, I was in love with your mother. We were together for 2 years. I wanted to marry her, but she married my father. Yes, because I wasn't good enough for her." The pain in his voice was raw. "I was building my empire, making enemies, living dangerously. She wanted stability, children, a normal life. So she left me and married Richard Okafor. a Nigerian diplomat who could give her everything I couldn't. Benita felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. My father never mentioned you. I'm sure he didn't. He won the prize after all. He got G1. Got to have a family with her. Got to watch her smile every day while I built an empire on rage and emptiness. Minho's eyes lifted to Benita's face. And then she died and he took you away, and I never saw either of you again. The grief in his voice was almost unbearable. I'm sorry, Benita said quietly. Don't be sorry. Minho's expression hardened. Be afraid, because the moment you walked into this office, everything changed. What are you talking about? He moved closer, backing her against the desk. Your father took everything from me. My happiness, my future, the woman I loved. And now, 21 years later, fate delivers his daughter right into my hands. His smile was cold, cruel. Do you believe in karma, Benita? Fear shot through her. Stay away from me, or what? You'll call for help? You'll run? He caged her against the desk with his arms. You're in my club, in my territory, with no one who knows you're here. You're completely at my mercy. What do you want from me? What I want, Minho said softly, is revenge. Your father destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy his, and you're going to help me do it. Benita's blood ran cold. I'm not helping you do anything. You don't have a choice. He pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and a man's voice came through the speaker. One of Minho's guards, bring the car around. We have a guest who'll be staying with us. He hung up before Benita could scream. She tried to push past him, but he grabbed her waist, lifting her onto the desk effortlessly. Let me go! This is kidnapping! Call it what you want. You're coming with me. Why? What are you going to do to me? Minho's hand came up to her face, his thumb brushing her cheek in a gesture that might have been tender if not for the ice in his eyes. I'm going to keep you, make you mine. Use you however I please. And then I'm going to make sure your father knows exactly what I'm doing to his precious daughter. Benita slapped him, hard. The crack echoed through the office. Minho's head turned from the impact, a red mark blooming on his cheek. Slowly, he turned back to face her, and the look in his eyes made her blood freeze. That, he said quietly, was a mistake. Before she could react, he grabbed her wrists and pulled them behind her back, holding them with one hand. His other hand gripped her jaw, forcing her to look at him. Let me make something very clear, Benita. You're mine now, property, a tool for my revenge. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. I'm not anyone's property. She struggled, but his grip was unbreakable. You're wrong. You became mine the moment you walked through that door. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her face. And I'm going to enjoy breaking you. Two men appeared in the doorway. Sir, the car is ready. Good, bring her. Minho released Benita's wrists, but before she could run, the guards grabbed her arms. She fought, kicking and screaming, but they were too strong. They dragged her out of the office, through the maze of hallways, and out a back exit where a black SUV waited. Please, Benita begged, looking back at Minho, who followed behind them. Please don't do this. His expression was stone. Your mother begged me too. Begged me to let her go, to understand why she was leaving. I listened to her. I let her walk away. And it destroyed me. He nodded to the guards. Put her in the car. They shoved her into the back seat. Minho climbed in beside her and the door locked automatically. The SUV pulled away from the club, into the night. Where are you taking me? My home. You'll stay there until I'm finished with you. My editor knows where I am. People will look for me. Minho pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then showed her the screen. It was a text from her editor. Benita, I've decided to pull you from the Seoul assignment. Come back to Lagos immediately. Consider this your 2 weeks' notice. Benita's stomach dropped. You hacked my email. I own half the technology companies in Seoul. Hacking your email was child's play. He pocketed his phone. As far as your editor knows, you quit and went home. No one is looking for you. No one even knows you're missing. The reality of her situation crashed over her. She was completely alone, in the hands of a man who hated her father enough to use her as revenge. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Minho's jaw tightened. Because for 21 years I've lived with the hole your mother left in my chest. Every day I wake up and remember what I lost, what your father took from me, and now I finally have a chance to make him feel even a fraction of that pain. I'm not my father, no. You're better. You're his daughter. The one thing in this world he loves more than anything. Minho's eyes traveled over her face. And when he finds out what I'm doing to you, it will kill him. The SUV drove through Seoul's streets, passing bright lights and busy intersections, heading toward the mountains where the city's elite lived in secluded mansions. Benita's mind raced, looking for escape routes, but there were none. The doors were locked, the driver was Minho's man, and even if she could run, where would she go? She didn't know Seoul anymore. Hadn't lived here in 16 years. The next moment, they pulled through massive gates into a private estate. The mansion was enormous, modern architecture blended with traditional Korean elements, surrounded by manicured gardens and high walls. The SUV stopped in front of the entrance and Minho got out, waiting for her. Benita didn't move. "Get out," he said calmly. "Make me." Minho sighed, reached in, and pulled her out bodily. She struggled, but he threw her over his shoulder like she weighed nothing, carrying her up the steps while she pounded on his back. "Put me down, as you wish." He set her down in the entrance hall, but kept his hand wrapped around her wrist. The interior of the mansion was stunning, all clean lines and expensive art, but Benita barely noticed. She was too focused on the terror clawing at her throat. Minho led her upstairs, down a hallway lined with closed doors, and stopped at the last one. He opened it and pushed her inside. The room was large, decorated in soft grays and whites, with a king-sized bed, a sitting area, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. It might have been beautiful if it wasn't a prison. "This is your room," Minho said. "You'll stay here when I don't need you." "Need me for what?" Her voice shook. He walked to her slowly, backing her toward the bed. "Whatever I want, whenever I want it." Benita's legs hit the mattress and she sat down hard. Minho towered over her, his presence overwhelming. "Please," she whispered. "I haven't done anything to you." "No, but your father did. And you're going to pay his debt. This is insane. Revenge won't bring my mother back." "I know." His hand came up, fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her head back. "But it will make me feel better." He leaned down, and Benita thought he was going to kiss her, but instead his mouth went to her ear. "Get some rest. Tomorrow your new life begins." Then he released her and walked to the door. "Don't try to escape. The estate is guarded, the gates are locked, and even if you made it outside, you'd be lost in minutes." He paused in the doorway. "And Benita, if you run, I'll find you, and when I do, I won't be this gentle." The door closed and she heard the lock click. Benita sat there, shaking, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She was trapped, completely and utterly trapped in the hands of a man who wanted to destroy her father by destroying her. She looked around the room, searching for anything she could use. The windows were locked, reinforced glass. The door was solid wood, the lock electronic. There was a bathroom attached, also windowless. No phone, no computer, nothing to call for help. Later that night, Benita lay in the bed, still fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about the photo of her mother with Minho. They'd looked happy, in love, and now he was using that love as justification for revenge. It was sick, twisted, but she'd seen the pain in his eyes when he talked about her mother. Real, devastating pain that 21 years hadn't healed.
The next morning, someone knocked on the door. A woman entered, middle-aged and kind-faced, carrying a tray of food. "Good morning," she said in Korean. "I'm Mrs. Han. I manage the household." Benita sat up. "Please, you have to help me. He's keeping me here against my will." Mrs. Han's expression didn't change. "I brought breakfast. You should eat." "Did you hear me? I'm being held prisoner." "I heard you." Mrs. Han set the tray on the bedside table. "But there's nothing I can do. Mr. Kang's orders are absolute. You're just going to let him do this. I'm going to survive. I suggest you do the same." Mrs. Han walked to the closet and opened it. Inside were dozens of dresses, all in Benita's size, all expensive. "Mr. Kang wants you to wear one of these today. He'll send for you this afternoon." Benita's stomach turned. "I'm not wearing anything he bought." "Then you'll go naked. Either way, you're seeing him." Mrs. Han headed for the door. "Eat, shower, make yourself presentable. It will be easier if you cooperate." She left before Benita could respond. The morning dragged by. Benita didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't change clothes. She sat by the window, staring out at the gardens, plotting escape routes that led nowhere. At 2 in the afternoon, the door opened again. This time, it was one of Minho's guards. "Mr. Kang requests your presence in his office." "Tell Mr. Kang to go to hell." The guard's expression didn't change. "You can walk or I can carry you, your choice." Benita stood, her hands clenched into fists. "Fine, I'll walk." The guard led her through the mansion, down a different hallway to a set of double doors. He knocked twice, opened them, and gestured for her to enter. Benita stepped inside and the doors closed behind her. Minho's home office was just as impressive as the one at the club. He sat behind a massive desk, reading documents, and didn't look up when she entered. The silence stretched for a full minute. Finally, he spoke. "You didn't change. I'm not your doll to dress up." He looked up then, his eyes traveling over her wrinkled dress from yesterday, her tangled hair, her defiant expression. Something flickered in his face. Approval, maybe. Stubborn, just like your mother. "Don't talk about my mother." "Why not? She's the reason we're both here." Minho stood, walking around the desk. "Come here." "No," his jaw tightened. "Benita, I'm trying to be civilized about this, but if you keep refusing me, I'll stop being nice." "You call this nice? Kidnapping me, threatening me, using me for revenge? Compared to what I could be doing, yes." The implication made her skin crawl, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What do you want from me right now?" "I want you to sit." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Benita didn't move. Minho sighed, crossed the room, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her to the chair. He pushed her down into it, not gentle but not violent either. Then he perched on the edge of his desk, looking down at her. "Here's how this is going to work. You belong to me now. You'll live in this house, eat the food I provide, wear the clothes I buy. And when I want you, you'll come to me without argument. And if I refuse, then I'll make you." His voice was soft, dangerous. "I can be patient, Benita. I've waited 21 years for this. I can wait a few more days for you to accept reality, but my patience isn't infinite." Benita met his eyes, refusing to look away. "You're not going to break me." A slow smile curved his lips. "We'll see." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek, and Benita flinched. The smile faded. "I'm not going to hurt you, not physically. That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" "Control, power, making your father suffer the way I've suffered." "My father doesn't even know I'm here." "Not yet, but he will, soon." Minho stood, walked to a cabinet, and poured himself a drink. Whiskey, expensive by the look of the bottle. "In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy having you here, having something that belongs to him under my roof, under my control." He took a sip, his eyes never leaving her face. "Tell me, does your father know you came to Seoul?" Benita didn't answer. Minho smiled. "I'll take that as a yes, which means when you don't return his calls, when days turn into weeks, he'll start to worry. He'll start looking for you. And when he can't find you, when the fear becomes unbearable, that's when I'll send him proof that I have you." "What kind of proof?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Photos, maybe, videos, evidence that his daughter is alive and well and living in my home under my care." The way he said care made it clear he meant something else entirely. "He'll lose his mind, and that's exactly what I want." Minho finished his drink and set the glass down. "But we have time. I'm not in a rush. I've waited this long. I can savor this." He walked back to her, crouched down so they were eye level. "I'm going to give you a choice, Benita. You can fight me every step of the way, make this difficult for both of us, and still end up exactly where I want you. Or you can accept your situation, cooperate, and make this easier on yourself. You're asking me to cooperate in my own abuse. I'm asking you to be smart." Benita leaned forward, her face inches from his. "I will never cooperate with you. Never. You can keep me here, you can do whatever sick things you're planning, but I will fight you every single day. And when I get out of here, I'm going to destroy you." Minho's eyes darkened. Then, without warning, he grabbed her face and pulled her into a brutal kiss. Benita froze in shock. His mouth was demanding, possessive, taking what he wanted without permission. She tried to pull away, but his hand fisted in her hair, holding her in place. His other hand gripped her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss was nothing like the tender moment they'd almost shared in his club office. This was punishment, domination, a reminder of exactly how powerless she was. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. Benita's eyes burned with tears of rage and humiliation. "I hate you," she whispered. "Good," Minho said, his thumb brushing across her swollen lips. "Hate is better than indifference. At least it means you feel something." He stood, putting distance between them again. "You're dismissed. Mrs. Han will bring you dinner. Tomorrow we'll continue this conversation." Benita stood on shaking legs and walked to the door. She could feel his eyes on her the whole way. The guard was waiting outside, ready to escort her back to her room. As she walked through the mansion, she made mental notes of everything. Guard positions, exit routes, security cameras. She might be trapped for now, but she wouldn't stay that way forever. She'd find a way out. And when she did, she'd make sure Kang Minho paid for every second of this nightmare. The next few days fell into a twisted routine. Every morning, Mrs. Han brought breakfast. Every afternoon, Minho summoned Benita to his office. And every time she refused to cooperate. She wouldn't wear the clothes he bought, wouldn't eat at his table, wouldn't speak unless forced to. Her defiance seemed to amuse him at first, then frustrate him, and finally ignite something darker in his eyes. On the fourth day, everything changed. Benita was standing by her window when the door opened without warning. Minho walked in, dressed in a black suit, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. "Get dressed, we're going out." Benita turned to face him. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are. I have a business dinner tonight and you're accompanying me." "Absolutely not." Minho's jaw tightened. He walked to the closet, pulled out an emerald green dress and threw it on the bed. "Put this on, you have 10 minutes. Or what?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, backing her against the window. "Or I'll dress you myself, and I promise you won't enjoy the process." His voice was low, threatening. Benita lifted her chin. "You don't scare me." "Then you're stupider than I thought." They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Finally, Minho stepped back. 8 minutes now." He walked to the door, paused. "And Benita, if you embarrass me tonight, if you try to signal for help or tell anyone what's happening, I'll make sure your father receives a very detailed account of every moment you've spent in my home, including the parts you'd rather he never knew about." The threat was clear. Benita's hands clenched into fists. "I hate you." "You've mentioned that 7 minutes." After he left, Benita stared at the dress on the bed. She wanted to rip it to shreds, but she also knew Minho wasn't bluffing. If she pushed him too far, he'd punish her father, and despite everything, she still loved her father. She didn't want him to suffer because of her stubbornness. With shaking hands, she picked up the dress. It was beautiful, form-fitting, expensive. Everything she'd normally love, but wearing it felt like surrender. Still, what choice did she have? She changed quickly, her skin crawling at the feel of the silk against her body. It hugged her curves perfectly, the emerald color making her dark skin glow. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Mrs. Han appeared at the door with a makeup kit and styled her hair without asking permission, pulling it into an elegant updo. When she was finished, Benita looked like she belonged at Minho's side. The thought made her sick. Minho returned exactly 10 minutes later. His eyes traveled over her slowly, something unreadable flickering in their depths. "Perfect," he said quietly. Then he held out his arm. "Shall we?" Benita didn't take it. "I can walk on my own." "I wasn't asking." He grabbed her hand and tucked it into the crook of his elbow, his grip firm enough to prevent escape. "Tonight, you're going to smile. You're going to be charming. You're going to act like you want to be here. Understood?" "And if I don't, then tomorrow will be very unpleasant for you." The promise in his voice made her shiver. They walked through the mansion to the waiting car. The driver opened the door and Minho guided her inside, sliding in beside her. The moment the door closed, his hand landed on her thigh, possessive and controlling. Benita tried to push it away, but his fingers tightened. "Don't," he warned softly. "You're mine tonight. Act like it." The restaurant was one of Seoul's most exclusive, the kind of place where business deals worth millions were made over expensive wine and perfect food. Minho kept his hand on the small of her back as they walked in, guiding her like property. They were led to a private room where 3 men in expensive suits waited. They stood when Minho entered, bowing respectfully. Their eyes slid to Benita with obvious curiosity. "Gentlemen," Minho said smoothly, "this is Benita, my companion." The way he emphasized the last word made it clear exactly what kind of companion she was. Benita wanted to scream the truth, to tell these men she was being held against her will, but Minho's warning echoed in her mind. One wrong move and her father would pay, so she smiled, played the part. Sat beside Minho while he conducted business in Korean, his hand occasionally squeezing her thigh under the table as a reminder of who was in control. The dinner lasted 3 hours, 3 hours of pretending, 3 hours of feeling Minho's hands on her, casual touches that looked affectionate to outsiders but felt like chains. When they finally left, Benita was exhausted from maintaining the facade. In the car, she slumped against the window as far from Minho as possible. "You did well tonight," he said. She didn't respond. "Benita, I'm talking to you." What do you want me to say? Congratulations on successfully using me as your arm candy. His hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her to look at him. I want you to acknowledge that you're starting to understand your place. My place? She jerked away from his touch. Is that what you think this is? You forcing me to play dress up and smile at your business associates? That's exactly what this is, and you're going to get used to it. I'll never get used to being your prisoner. Minho's eyes darkened. We'll see about that. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When they arrived at the mansion, Minho didn't escort her to her room. Instead, he pulled her toward his office. We need to have a conversation. I'm tired. I want to go to my room. That wasn't a request. He practically dragged her into the office, closing the door behind them. Benita spun to face him. What now? More threats, more games? No games, just truth. Minho walked to his desk, pulled out that same photograph of her mother and stared at it. Do you want to know what really happened 21 years ago? You already told me. She left you for my father. That's only part of the story. Minho set the photo down and looked at Benita with an expression so raw it made her breath catch. Your mother was pregnant when she left me. 3 months along. My child. Benita's world tilted. What? She didn't tell me. I found out later after she'd already married your father. She miscarried 6 weeks after the wedding. The stress of leaving me, of being forced into a marriage she didn't want, it killed our baby. Forced, Benita whispered. What are you talking about? Your father knew she was pregnant. He found out somehow, I still don't know how, and he threatened her. Told her if she didn't marry him, he'd have me arrested on fabricated charges, have me deported or worse. Your mother knew I had enemies, knew I was vulnerable, so she sacrificed herself to protect me. Minho's voice broke. She married him to save my life, and it destroyed both of us. Benita shook her head. No, that's not true. My father loved my mother. He mourned her for years after she died. Of course he did, because he knew he'd never truly had her. She went through the motions, played the dutiful wife, but her heart was always mine. Even when she got pregnant with you a year later, even when she tried to build a life with him, I knew the truth. She still loved me. How could you possibly know that? Because she told me. Minho opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of letters, the same ones Benita had seen before. She wrote to me for 5 years after she married him, letters she could never send that she kept hidden. I only found them after she died. A mutual friend gave them to me. He held one out. Read it. Benita took the letter with shaking hands. It was dated 2 years after her parents' marriage, a few months after Benita was born. Minho, I held my daughter today and all I could think about was the child we lost. The one who should have been ours. I love Benita, but every time I look at her I see what could have been. Richard is a good father, a good husband, but he's not you. He'll never be you. I made my choice and I have to live with it. But God, it hurts. Every single day it hurts. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jaiwan. Tears blurred Benita's vision. Her mother had been unhappy, trapped in a marriage she didn't want, mourning a man she couldn't have. All this time, Benita had thought her parents' marriage was loving, stable, but it had been a lie. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand. Your father didn't win. He didn't get the happy ending. He got a wife who loved someone else and a marriage built on blackmail and fear. So what? That justifies what you're doing to me. Benita threw the letter on the desk. Using me to get revenge on him? Yes, Minho's control finally snapped. Yes, it justifies it. He took everything from me. My happiness, my child, the woman I loved. And for what? To satisfy his own selfish desires, to own something he knew he could never truly have. He grabbed Benita's shoulders. I've spent 21 years in hell. Now it's his turn. I'm not my father. No, but you're all I have left of her. The words hung in the air between them. Minho's eyes were wild, desperate. When I look at you, I see her. Your eyes, your stubborn streak, the way you refuse to back down even when you should. You're Park Jae-won's daughter in every way that matters. And having you here under my control, it's the closest I'll ever get to having her back. Benita stared at him, finally understanding. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about obsession, grief, a desperate attempt to reclaim something he'd lost decades ago. This is sick, she whispered. You're trying to replace her with me. Maybe I am. Minho's hand slid up to cup her face. Maybe that makes me twisted and wrong, but I don't care anymore. I've been empty for so long, Benita. And then you walked into my club and suddenly I felt something again. You felt revenge? No. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. I felt alive. Before she could process that, he kissed her. But this time it wasn't brutal or punishing. It was desperate, hungry, like he was drowning and she was air. Benita froze, shock making her immobile. His mouth moved against hers with a passion that terrified her because part of her, a small traitorous part, wanted to kiss him back. She shoved against his chest. "Stop, this is wrong." "I know," but he didn't stop. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. "You're my father's age," she was sobbing now. "This is insane, I'm not your toy." Minho pulled back just enough to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath stop. Not just lust, not just revenge, something deeper, something that looked almost like anguish. "You think this is about pleasure," he said roughly. Then he grabbed her chin, forced her to look at something on his desk, the photograph, but not the one of her mother, a different one hidden underneath. Benita's breath caught. It was her mother and father on their wedding day. Her mother in a white dress, smiling for the camera. But in the background, barely visible in the crowd, stood a younger Minho, and the look on his face as he watched them was pure devastation. "I was there," Minho said quietly. "Your mother invited me, can you believe that? She wanted me to see her marry another man, to watch her promise herself to someone else while our child was dead in the ground." His voice broke. "And I went, because I couldn't stay away from her, because I was pathetic and desperate and still hoping she'd change her mind at the last second." He forced Benita to look at the photo. "You think this is about lust. This is about revenge. Revenge for watching the woman I loved destroy herself trying to make your father happy. Revenge for 21 years of wondering what our life could have been." Benita was crying fully now, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she sobbed. "Please stop this. I'm not her. I can never be her." "I know." Minho released her chin, his expression hollow. "But you're all I have left." He stepped back, putting distance between them. "Go to your room." "What?" "Go, before I do something we'll both regret." Benita didn't wait for him to change his mind. She ran from the office, through the mansion, to her room. She slammed the door and collapsed on the bed, sobbing until she had no tears left. Everything she'd thought she knew about her parents was a lie. Her mother had been trapped. Her father had been a manipulator. And now she was caught in the crossfire of a decades-old tragedy that had nothing to do with her. The next morning, Benita woke to find a note slipped under her door. Just 3 words in Minho's handwriting. "I'm sorry." But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't set her free. Sorry didn't undo the damage. She spent the day in her room, refusing to eat, refusing to see anyone. Mrs. Han tried to bring food, but Benita sent her away. She wanted to be alone with her grief and confusion. That evening, someone knocked on her door. Not Mrs. Han, Minho. "Benita, open the door." She didn't respond. "Please, I need to talk to you." "Go away." The lock clicked and the door opened. Minho stood there, looking tired, older. "We need to talk about what happened last night." "There's nothing to talk about. You made your feelings clear." He walked in, closing the door behind him. "I shouldn't have kissed you. That was wrong. Everything about this situation is wrong." Benita stood, facing him. "You kidnapped me. You're using me for revenge. You're trying to turn me into some replacement for my mother. All of it is wrong." "I know." His voice was quiet. "But I can't let you go." "Why not? What's the point of keeping me here if you know this is sick?" "Because letting you go means accepting that she's really gone, that I'll never get a second chance, that I wasted 21 years mourning someone who isn't coming back." Minho sat on the edge of her bed, head in his hands. "And I'm not strong enough to accept that." Benita stared at him, seeing for the first time not a monster but a broken man. "You need help, professional help." "I need her, but she's dead, so I'll settle for you." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "I know that makes me a villain. I know you'll never forgive me, but I don't care anymore. I'm too far gone." "Then what happens now?" Benita asked quietly. "Do you just keep me here forever? Use me whenever you want? Wait for my father to find out so you can watch him suffer?" "I don't know." The admission seemed to cost him. "I didn't think past getting you here. I didn't plan for what comes next. Maybe you should let me go. Let both of us move on with our lives." "I can't." Minho stood, walked to her. "Every time I try to convince myself to release you, I look at your face and I see her. And I can't do it. I can't lose her again." His hand came up to her cheek. "Even if having you here is torture, even if you hate me, at least you're here. At least I can see her eyes looking back at me." "I'm not her," Benita whispered. "I know, but you're close enough." This time when he kissed her, Benita didn't fight. Not because she wanted it, but because she was tired. tired of fighting, tired of crying, tired of being strong. She let him pull her against him, let his mouth claim hers, let his hands roam over her body through the thin fabric of her nightgown. It felt wrong and right at the same time, which made it even more confusing. Minho lifted her, carrying her to the bed. He laid her down gently, his body covering hers. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her lips. "Tell me you don't want this." But Benita couldn't speak, because the truth was complicated. She hated him for what he'd done, but she also understood his pain in a way she wished she didn't, and her body was betraying her, responding to his touch despite her mind screaming that this was wrong. "Benita," he breathed, his hands sliding under her nightgown. "Say something. This is wrong," she finally managed. "You're my father's age mate, this is wrong." "I know." His mouth moved to her neck. "But I can't stop." His hands explored her body, touching her in ways that made her gasp. She tried to push him away, but he caught her wrists, pinning them above her head with one hand. "Don't fight me," he said roughly. "Not tonight." "I have to," she sobbed. "If I don't fight, then I'm accepting this. I'm accepting being your prisoner, your toy, your replacement for her." "You're not a replacement." His free hand cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "You're something else entirely, something I didn't expect, something that scares me more than any enemy I've ever faced." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that somewhere in this twisted mess I started to see you, not her, you." His thumb brushed her lips. "Your fire, your strength, the way you refuse to break no matter what I do. That's all you, Benita, not Jaiwan, you." The confession hung between them, Benita's breath caught. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Minho released her wrists, rolling off her to lie beside her on the bed. They stared at the ceiling in silence. "What happens now?" Benita finally asked. "I don't know," Minho admitted. "Part of me still wants revenge, still wants to make your father suffer, but another part," he trailed off. "Another part what?" "Another part wants to keep you for entirely different reasons." Benita turned her head to look at him. "You can't have me, not like this, not as a prisoner." "I know." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "But I don't know how to let you go either." They lay there for a long time, hands linked, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Minho stood. "Get some rest, tomorrow." He paused. "Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." He left before she could respond. Benita lay in the darkness, her hand still warm from his touch, her mind spinning. She should hate him, should be planning escape. But instead, she was thinking about the pain in his eyes, the way his voice broke when he talked about her mother, the confession that he was starting to see her as herself and not just a ghost. It was dangerous territory, the kind that led to Stockholm Syndrome and twisted feelings. But she couldn't deny that something had shifted between them tonight. The next 3 days were strange. Minho stopped summoning her to his office, stopped making demands. Instead, he gave her space. She was still locked in her room at night, still a prisoner, but during the day she had more freedom. She could walk the gardens with an escort, could eat in the dining room instead of her room, could read in the library. It was a gilded cage, but still a cage. One morning, Benita was in the garden when Minho appeared. He'd been avoiding her since that night, conducting his business elsewhere, giving her room to breathe. "Walk with me," he said. It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a request either. Benita fell into step beside him. They walked in silence through the carefully maintained paths, past fountains and sculptures. "I've been thinking," Minho finally said, "about your father, about revenge, and I'm not sure it's worth it anymore." He stopped, turning to face her. "Hurting him won't bring her back, won't change the past, won't heal what's broken." "So you're letting me go?" Hope flared in Benita's chest. "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe this doesn't have to be about revenge anymore. Maybe it can be about something else." He stepped closer. "Maybe it can be about choice." "What choice? I'm your prisoner, I don't have choices." "You do now." Minho pulled an envelope from his pocket. "Inside this is a plane ticket to Lagos, first class, leaving tomorrow, and a phone with your father's number programmed in." Benita stared at the envelope like it might be a trap. "What's the catch?" "No catch. You can leave tomorrow, go back to your life. I'll never contact you again. Your father will never know you were here." "Why?" Her voice shook. "Why would you let me go now?" "Because keeping you against your will isn't giving me what I thought it would. It's just making us both miserable." He held out the envelope, but Benita didn't take it. "There has to be more to it than that." "There is." Minho's eyes met hers. I'm giving you a choice. You can leave tomorrow, free and clear, or you can stay, not as my prisoner, not as my revenge, but as someone who chooses to be here. Why would I ever choose to stay? Because despite everything, despite the horrible way this started, I think part of you understands me, understands this grief. Understands what it's like to lose someone and never get over it. Benita wanted to deny it, but she couldn't, because he was right. She did understand. Her mother's death had shaped her entire life, had driven her to become a journalist, to seek truth, to never accept surface explanations. And in Minho, she saw her own pain reflected back. Understanding you doesn't mean I should stay. No, but maybe wanting to doesn't make you crazy either. I don't want to stay, Benita said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then take the ticket, leave tomorrow, forget this ever happened. He pressed the envelope into her hands. But if you stay, if you choose this, then things change. You're not my prisoner anymore, you're my guest, free to leave whenever you want, free to say no, free to set boundaries. And what do you get out of it? A chance to know you, the real you, not as Jaiwon's daughter or Richard's revenge, just Benita. She stared at the envelope, her mind racing. This was what she'd wanted. Freedom, escape, the chance to go home and forget this nightmare. So why was she hesitating? I need time to think, she said. You have until tomorrow morning. The flight leaves at noon. Minho walked away, leaving her standing in the garden with the envelope clutched in her hands. Benita spent the rest of the day in turmoil. She should leave, should take the ticket and run. But every time she tried to convince herself, she thought about Minho's pain, about her mother's letters, about the strange connection that had formed between them despite the horrible circumstances. That night, she couldn't sleep. She paced her room, the envelope on the bedside table mocking her indecision. At midnight, she made her choice. She walked through the silent mansion to Minho's office. The door was open, light spilling out. He sat at his desk, a glass of whiskey in hand, looking at that photograph of her mother. I thought you'd be asleep, Benita said from the doorway. Minho looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Couldn't sleep. Neither could I. She walked into the office, closing the door behind her. She held up the envelope. I should take this, I should leave and never look back. Yes, you should. But I can't stop thinking about something you said, about choice, about this being something different. She set the envelope on his desk. If I stay, everything changes. No more prisoner, no more revenge, no more using me to hurt my father. Agreed. Minho stood, walking around the desk. And you can leave any time you want. I won't stop you. Why do you want me to stay? Benita asked quietly. Because in the past week, you've made me feel something other than grief for the first time in 21 years, and I'm not ready to let that go. He stopped in front of her. But I won't force you. It has to be your choice. Benita looked at him, really looked at him, not as the monster who'd kidnapped her, but as a man broken by loss and desperate for connection. If I stay, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll tell my father the truth, about you and my mother, about what really happened. He deserves to know. Minho's jaw tightened. That's not easy for me. I know, but if we're doing this, if we're starting over, then it can't be built on lies and revenge. It has to be honest, painful but honest. Minho considered for a long moment, then he nodded. I'll tell him when you're ready, when we're ready. Okay. Benita took a breath. Then I'm staying, not forever, not as a prisoner, but as someone who wants to understand this, whatever this is. Minho's eyes searched her face. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. A smile tugged at his lips, small and genuine. Your mother would have said the same thing. I'm not her, Benita said firmly. I know, and I'm starting to be glad about that. He reached out, brushing a curl behind her ear. Can I kiss you, as myself, not as a man seeking revenge or replacement, just as Minho kissing Benita? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Benita knew this was the moment everything changed. If she said yes, she was choosing this path, choosing him despite everything, choosing to see where this impossible, complicated connection might lead. Yes, she whispered. Minho cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. It was nothing like the other kisses, brutal or desperate. This one was tender, questioning, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. But Benita didn't pull away. She leaned into him, her hands gripping his shirt, kissing him back with equal tenderness. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. This is insane, Benita said. Completely. It's wrong on so many levels. I know, and I'm probably going to regret this. Minho smiled. Probably, but for now, can we just see where it goes? Benita nodded. They stood there in his office, holding each other, both aware they were embarking on something dangerous and unprecedented. A relationship built on the ashes of grief and revenge, but transforming into something else. Something real. The next 6 months were a revelation. Minho kept his promise. Benita was free to leave whenever she wanted, though she found herself staying. They talked for hours about her mother, about his past, about their separate griefs. He showed her the soul he knew, not the tourist version but the real city. And slowly, carefully, they built something that resembled trust. Minho also kept his other promise. He called Benita's father and told him everything. The call lasted 3 hours and ended with both men in tears, reconciling over shared grief for the woman they'd both loved. Richard admitted he'd manipulated Jaiwan into marriage, admitted he'd known she never truly loved him, admitted he'd been selfish and desperate. The truth was painful but necessary. When Richard asked to speak to Benita, she told him she was safe, that she'd chosen to stay, and that she needed time before seeing him. He understood, said he'd wait as long as she needed, and hung up. The weight of secrets finally lifted. The next year, Benita and Minho's relationship deepened. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, moments where the age gap felt insurmountable, times when the ghost of her mother stood between them. But they worked through it, both committed to building something real. Minho softened, the hard edges worn away by Benita's presence. He laughed more, smiled more, found reasons to live beyond revenge and grief. Benita discovered parts of herself she hadn't known existed, found strength in vulnerability, found healing in the most unexpected place. 2 years after that night in the garden, Minho proposed. Not in his office or his mansion, but in the hospital where Benita's mother had died. It was poetic, closing the circle of grief that had defined them both. Benita said yes. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. Richard walked her down the aisle, shaking Minho's hand at the altar in a moment of forgiveness and understanding that brought everyone to tears. And when Benita discovered she was pregnant 8 months into their marriage, when she told Minho he was going to be a father, the look on his face was pure joy mixed with terror and hope. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, healthy and perfect. They named her Jaiwan, honoring the woman who'd brought them together in the most painful, complicated way. Minho held his daughter and wept, 24 years of grief finally finding its release. He'd lost one child to tragedy and spent decades in darkness. But now, holding this tiny life with Benita beside him, he finally understood. Love wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about honoring it by building something new. Benita watched him with their daughter and knew she'd made the right choice that night in the garden. The choice to stay, to forgive, to see beyond revenge and pain to the broken man underneath. Their story had started in darkness, in kidnapping and manipulation and grief, but it had transformed into something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And as Minho looked at her over their daughter's head, love and gratitude shining in his eyes, Benita smiled. Because sometimes the most broken beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. Sometimes revenge transformed into redemption. Sometimes pain became purpose. And sometimes, in the ruins of tragedy, love found a way to bloom.